Hello, welcome to On the Creative Road. I'm Brenda Harris, and today is day 17 of 30 days of art warm-ups, and we're transitioning a little bit. Today, we're going to move on to acrylic, and perhaps you were already using acrylic, so keep going with that. I'm using cadmium red, cadmium yellow, and cobalt blue. Yep, those are going to be my main colors. I do have some aqua green here, and I also have like a fluorescent pink that I might throw in, but for the most part, I'm just using those primary colors. I want it to be bright. We're just doing, just playing with our materials today, so you don't have to worry too much about, well, what are we painting? We're not using a reference. We're going back to just some playful exercises, but this time with paint. So initially we had started with, dry materials, and today we're playing with paint. So a little bit more abstract, okay? All right, let's go.
Okay, so one thing you're going to notice today is that the audio is going to be a little bit different, and you'll notice that the video is sped up. And the reason I did that is because today we're going to be painting little miniature color palettes. I painted 10, and they're basically 10 little abstract paintings. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because since I did 10 examples for you, it took me about 30 minutes. And I want to make sure I keep these warm-ups to about 10 minutes. And so I encourage you to follow along. And if you're painting with me, to paint maybe 4. So that way, because it doesn't take as long to paint 4. But of course, if you want to paint 10, or if you want to try to do similar to what I did, then go for it. But it did take me a little bit longer. And honestly, I loved it. It's so fun just playing with the material. And today I'm working with acrylic paint. And so you just get a good feel for mixing. It's like getting your feet wet. I think it's a great warm up for maybe before you start a larger painting or a more technical painting, just because it kind of awakens those muscles of like, oh yeah, okay, I need more quantities of white to get this pink color, or I had too much water on my paint, and okay, I need to remember that I don't want that much water on my paint or whatever. It just kind of turns on your brain, turns on your creative brain to like what you want for your painting. So perfect warm up before you start painting a bigger painting, or just for fun. I started with my background colors first, and I was just going for variety. I didn't want to put too many of the same color next to each other. And so that's why you can see that I painted like a peachy color, put that down first, and then I mixed like a green, but I didn't want that right next to my peachy color. So honestly, there was no rhyme or reason. I was just trying to go for variety for my background colors. And then after that, I started to think about what colors paired nicely. So if I mixed a purple, I would kind of see where I felt like that looked better. I would think to myself, oh, okay, this peach, this little bit of purple would look really nice with this peach. And my brain started kind of thinking about quantities. So if my background is this really bright pink, then maybe I want a good amount of cool colors to go along with it. So my main color, my hero color is pink, but then maybe I have a couple side players that are blue and green and maybe a little bit of purple. And so that's how my mind kind of worked out my decision making. Like, who's the main character? What color is the main character? What colors are the side players? And it's a little bit of doodling as well. As I applied the color, some of them are kind of just big old splotchy dots, and some of them are little lines. Some of them are playfully added so they look like stars. Some of them are added so they look like stripes. Some of them are added so there's a little bit of a dry brush to it. And so really it's not only a play of color, it's a play of textures, right? It reminds me of when I used to doodle as a kid on my notes. I'd be taking notes for a class, and I would just doodle on the corner of my page. And the best part about those doodles is that there was no expectation. I didn't care if anybody saw it. Most of my notes got thrown away eventually. There was no doodle that I really kept. I knew it was temporary, basically. And so it was the best kind of play creatively, just because there was no pressure. It was making art without any pressure. It was just a little fun little thing that I did to pass the time, or because I was waiting for the teacher to stop talking about something or whatever it was. And so this is a little bit of that energy where there shouldn't be any pressure. There shouldn't be any judgment about, oh, well, this color clashes, or you're just playing. Maybe that's what you want. Maybe you want to kind of test out, do these colors clash together? Do these colors look good together? And if you keep it cool, maybe you do create like a little miniature abstract painting that you love and that you can replicate in another way. Or maybe you just keep it as an example of a color palette that you'd like to use in the future. But either way, it should just be fun and freeing and playful. And it does take a minute to mix your colors. And like I said, you can experiment with if you need more water, less water. There was a couple times where I realized I got too much water and it kind of dripped onto my paper. And those are all little notes that your brain is taking. As I was painting, my brain was making mental notes and saying, oh, okay, I don't want to do that again. Or, ooh, when I mixed that red into it, it made it brown and I really didn't like that color, so I'm not going to do that again. So your brain is just constantly making those mental notes. As an art teacher, whenever I'm giving a prompt or giving a lesson, I really don't like telling students that they have to paint a certain way, or that they have to apply it in apply whatever material they have, whether it's whether they're using a pencil or paint or watercolor or acrylic or chalk pastel, whatever the medium, it doesn't matter. I don't like saying it has to be applied in a certain way or that it has to look a certain way. I'm very careful about how I word things, because I want whoever's in my class or whoever's watching this video to feel like you can really make it your own. It doesn't have to look like what I'm doing. You can actually take what I'm doing and completely flip it upside down. I love it when I'm working with other illustrators and we all have the same prompt and somehow we all do radically different responses to the same prompt. And that is just the brilliant thing about creativity, and that we see things from our own eyes. And so we're all going to create something differently. So what you're painting, depending on what paint you have, what paint you're using, or brand you're using, or colors you're using, your miniature abstract paintings are going to look wildly different than mine, and they're supposed to. It's supposed to look different. And so as I finished my little pieces, my little miniature color palette abstract paintings, I started to get this sense of like, okay, I feel done. Like this little color palette feels done. I like this little collection that's happening. And so slowly I kind of was like looking, and some of the colors I was able to apply to each little palette or to several little palettes, just because the lighter light blue looked really nice with a few of the color palettes. And so I just kind of tucked it in where I could. And then as I came to an end, I thought, I painted these all together kind of like swatches. But in reality, I kind of like the idea of cutting it out and having them almost like a business card that I can pull out and say, hey, I'm going to try out this color palette. I've created this color palette, and I'm going to try to use this color palette in a drawing or in an illustration. And maybe that's something that down the road you'll notice that I share. But for now, we're just focusing on just creating cool color palettes. We're not thinking about how we'll use it later. But I like the idea that I could possibly use these little color palette monsters later on. And so I hope this is something that you can use in the future with other materials. It's fun to do it with paint. I often do it digitally. I'll just use my art brushes. I usually work digitally in Procreate, and I do a very similar thing where I switch my brushes. So sometimes I'll use like a watercolor brush, digital brush, and then I'll switch it to pencil brush, and I just kind of create this collection of textures and colors, and I try to switch up the intensity of the colors so that way there's a variation of contrast, a variation of texture, variation of pattern mark making, and I'll post a little example so you can see what I mean by like the digital version of this. Yeah, maybe you end up really liking this and you make more than I did, and that's great. I hope that you were able to at least do one. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.